you guys do, or what did you do to make sure that everyone had the right kind of reaction?
So one of the key things is flexibility in the role, right? So one of the things that I mentioned a little bit earlier on was that as a submariner, part of your qualification is knowing exactly what each valve on board does and knowing exactly how each system works. And I think I mentioned the fact that the idea behind that is that, you know, you might not necessarily have the luxury of getting the right person to be able to execute whatever rescue needs to be done at that particular point, at that particular time. And neither do you have the time to go run to forward accommodation, wake somebody up, wait for him to get dressed, and then go run to the valve bank to be able to close the right valve. You know, you just don't have that. You just don't have those luxuries. So one of the ways to overcome that is to provide flexibility in terms of the roles that the guys can perform. And in a submarine, there's redundancy across the board in terms of the personnel that you have. So everybody knows how to do everybody else's job. So irrespective of who is standing at that particular station, if there's a crisis, right, and a certain command comes through, that individual knows how to execute that command or how to execute that particular action, because they've had that flexibility in the training, not just to be able to execute their specialized function, but to have enough knowledge to be able to execute the function of somebody else if you happen to be at that particular point in time. So there's that flexibility and redundancy in the roles that helped quite a bit in that regard. Yeah. So that sort of provides also a lot more confidence in not just the confidence that you have in yourself, but also the confidence that you then have in the rest of your team. You know, for somebody to be able to competently execute not just their role, but somebody else's role as well. Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly very relevant today. And the unfortunate reality is that quite a few companies are having to rationalize their resources, which is a euphemism for letting people go. And the survivability of an entity will very much depend on the remaining people being able to have that flexibility and have competencies that extend just beyond their own job role. I mean, definitely.
Ty, if I can just come in there. Yeah, that's, you know, one of the things that we found in our company that's quite integral is that particular aspect, right? Because what it allows you to do, especially in a smaller firm like ours, is that it allows you to create what's known as a flexible or elastic resource, right? So depending on where you need your resources for a particular project or at a particular time, you can then move your resources to that part of the business. Now, we do a lot of project work, and projects has got very particular phases that it goes through, right? So what an elastic resource allows you to be able to do is, depending on what the critical matter is or what's happening in that particular project, you might be able to take resources from other projects and utilize them on the same project just for that short period of time, based on the skill level or based on the number of resources or skills required at that particular point in the project. Because having your resources, having that elastic capacity, it makes a massive difference, especially when you're a small team and you've got to start executing bigger projects. So that's been one of the key instruments for us that we instilled in our company. But in order for you to do that, you also need to make sure that your resources has got the capability to be able to learn that, right? And that's where a lot of the submarine training comes from. So before you even get to the boat, before you even touch anything on the boat, there's a lot of training that you need to go through to make sure that not only are you competent enough when you get to the boat, but that you've got the right set of skills and sort of inherent attributes to be able to learn those skills. And at a company level, that's the same thing that we've got to try and do. So one of the key ones for us is learning, and having to find a way to see how people learn, and what's the best way for them to learn. I'm going to give you an example on our submarine. In the submarine, for instance, when we looked at how do people learn, in other words, how does the boat learn from not just situations but also from our training. And one of the ways that we found that we learn best as a team was through experience, right? So we did there was a lot of simulations, and there's a lot of action stations and that sort of things that you do because you not only do you learn from that particular situation, but the key question to ask after that is that how did we learn? In other words, what processes did we go to in order for us to learn this particular aspect? And when we get to an organizational level, when we start hiring employees, when we look at which employees do we want to hire in our business, because it's a small business, we need to be flexible and we need to have that elastic capacity with our resources, is that we one of the key attributes is how do people learn? And because it's not about learning fast enough, because it's also about how do you learn? How do you actually take on concepts? How do you actually practice your learning? What is your learning style? Is it experiential? Is it, can you learn it from a book? Can you learn it by mentoring? So finding the right key with regards to how does your organization learn is critical to create that elastic capacity.
I think that's hugely insightful and relevant, because as we come out of this extended lockdown period, we read and hear a lot of opinions of what business life will be like hereafter. But frankly speaking, I don't think anyone can really predict anything in great detail. We can only surmise and guess. And the ability to, as a business owner or manager, to have resources that are flexible and elastic, as you call them, as well as the employee to have an understanding of how they learn and to be able to adapt to all these new duplicative or triplicative roles that they have to fulfill now in a resource constrained world. I think that's going to be hugely relevant and important going forward. Yeah.